Welcome in, everybody. I'm Nurse Huckleberry, and this is the Bad Reads Book Club.
Bad books, bad books. I've got so many bad books to read.
Where I read bad books, so you don't have to. Today, our book this month was The Smoke Thief, written by Shayna Abe. Back cover reads, in this bewitching novel, Shayna Abe transports us to an exhilarating world of romance, adventure, and magic. Here, among northern England's misted hills, live a race of extraordinarily beautiful and sensual beings with the ability to shape-shift from human to dragon and back again. Now their secret and their survival is threatened by two forbidden lovers and a passion that will break every boundary. Dubbed the Smoke Thief for a series of daring jewel thefts, Clarissa Rue Hawthorne didn't expect the Draken leader himself to come to London, dangling the tribe's most valuable jewel as bait, the Langford diamond. But Christoph, the charismatic Marquess of Langford, had to catch Clarissa before anyone else did, or risk exposing the entire clan to the world of ordinary mortals. He never expected that the outcast halfling he pursued would have a proposition of her own to save the Draken, a proposition so dangerous, so tempting, that Christoph will find it impossible to resist, to join forces with her. So, I really thought that this was going to be a pretty bad book.
Why?
You know, given the back cover, dragons, dragon sex, people turning into dragons, not so good. And I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of a good book. Like, I choose these based off of the cover, okay? And this is actually a pretty decent book. I liked it. It was pretty good. There were problems. There were some problems with it, but for the most part, the book was actually pretty good. They set the tone well, like good world building. Generally, like the writing was good. You know, they didn't like overdo anything in particular. So basically, the Draken is this race of people where the males can turn to smoke and then turn into dragons. But there's an intermediary. And the big important thing is that after they turn to smoke, if they turn back to human, they're completely naked. Not even water will stay on them. So if they get wet, they can just turn to smoke and then turn back human and they're dry again. They have like heightened senses, like sense of smell, hearing, not necessarily sight, but they're hearing, and then they can also just sense, vibe. And the big thing is it tries to explain like why dragons hoard jewels and stuff, where basically it's like acts as kind of a drug for them, where it like is like a little mind altering to like touch jewels. And so that's why they hoard them, and they can like feel the power of the jewels. Also, it's a very super like locked in community, and if you leave, they punch you down and kill you, right? No one's allowed to leave. Everyone's stuck. And it's a very rigid society where everybody has their roles and you do your thing, or they just cut your head off. You know, and there's like a whole hierarchy system involved. Anyways, Clarissa / Rue, when she was a young girl, she had a Draken mother and then a human father, and she was just mercilessly bullied for being a halfling and an outsider, and was just like cast aside by society. And so she was constantly being beat up. Eventually, when she was 17, she fakes her own death and she drowns herself, well, pretends to drown herself in the river to escape. Unbeknownst to everyone, she actually has the Draken powers, okay? It's supposed to be only the boys, but then she's like, oh shit, actually, I can do the cool smoky thing. It's called turning. She's like, I can turn. So she can turn, she's super cool. So she goes to London, right? Which is like a 9-day carriage ride away. So she goes to London, and she's in London. And the Draken, they hear about this smoke thief, and they assume that it is one of the runners, one of the people who's run away from the community. And they're like, we gotta go catch them and bring them back. Because the big thing they're worried about is them revealing Drakenkind to all of the humans, because they really don't want humans finding out that dragons are real. They like set up a whole thing and they're like, okay, we've got this like very special diamond and we're gonna take the diamond and use it as bait to lure her out. And so she often, and it's also set in like the 1700s. There's no electricity or anything. They're in the 1700s. She dresses as a man often. She's been like stealing a bunch of stuff, and then they bring this like big fancy diamond in and she's like, ooh, interesting. Not worth the risk. I can tell something's happening here. But then the diamond gets stolen anyways by someone else. But then they pick up her trail and they catch her, and then they cover her head in a bag, because apparently if you can't see, you can't change your form.
What?
I don't know. That was one of the rules, is if you can't see, you can't turn to smoke, which doesn't make any sense, but that was how they could explain how they kept her like from changing. So you can't see, you can't escape, so they just put a bag over your head and they're like, cool, you got to sit there now as a human. The other thing, they're all supposed to be like kind of like, it's like the general like vampires are like just better than humans at kind of everything. Same thing, Draken are like better than humans at everything. And so they're like not super strong, but they're like strong, you know, they got like the super senses. But then also apparently when there's smoke and or dragons, they can't talk at all. And so like, they're like, oh, there's sacrifices for your powers. And like the power to turn means that like when you're a dragon, you can't talk. So they just have to like give each other like looks like. And like, I don't know, I'm like, you don't have like a fucking dragon sign language? Like you guys don't learn sign language growing up, so that way you can like, or at least, I mean like, come on. Like I feel like if that's such a big problem, you would consider at least having like a bit of a formula. Like there's enough signaling in scuba. You can figure out some like dragon signals. Okay, I think I don't understand why they couldn't figure out some dragon signals. So the guy that like runs the whole dragon place, he's really hot and he's definitely been chased after a lot, but he hasn't like, you know, locked down a woman kind of situation, because none of them were right. And then it turns out, because she's the only lady that can like do the dragon powers, she's the alpha. Yes, they use the word alpha. This was one of the things I didn't like. And he's the alpha. So then they're destined to be wed. And she's like, yeah, I don't want any of this. You guys want to kill me. I don't want to have your babies, even though I totally had like a massive crush on you growing up. I don't want to have your babies and be forced to give up my life. And she's like, you know, I've got like this cool house. I got all sorts of clothes. I've got like a cook and a maid that work for me. And she has this little street urchin boy that she's like kind of like raised up a bit that she found. And she was like, yes, okay, I'm gonna take care of you. And so, and he like does errands for her and stuff. So of course there's this whole relationship between her and then the alpha dragon guy where she's like, I hate you, but you're really hot. And he's like, you're super annoying because you won't listen to all the things I say, but you're real sexy when you do it. And so they have this whole back and forth. And then she like convinces him that like, you know, they are falling in love. I think the other thing that really annoyed me was they do end up having sex at a masquerade costume party. There's like a bunch of like, okay, so obviously if you turn to smoke and then turn back to human, you're naked, right? There's a lot of just being naked. They're naked a lot, like a lot. And she's always like pulling down curtains and being like, oh, you know, being like, oh, excuse me. Oh, my nakedness. And then sometimes she's just like mad and just naked and just like does not care. So I don't know. And like her way of getting around this is she has like clothing stashed all throughout the city, and then she'll just like smoke her way into wherever.
The city?
Yeah, of London. And so then she's got these like little stashes of clothing because she's constantly just being like, just like leaving her clothes behind. The other thing that I find interesting is they can't carry anything when they're being smoke. So like she could get into places, but if she's stealing jewels, she has to get out in human form, which means she's having to escape while nude. So I don't entirely understand how that works, because apparently she's a very good jewel thief. And I'm not entirely sure how using the smoke to get in and then you have to get out naked. I feel like that's more obvious. Anyways, they go through this whole thing, and then it turns out that there's a second runner. There's a second person who left the tribe, and they're like, okay, we will give you, so they use the diamond as bait. They capture her even though she wasn't even gonna steal the diamond. And they're like, look, we'll give you your freedom if you tell us who has the diamond. She's like, yeah, okay. And then they were never intending to give her freedom. But she's like, okay, give me like 14 days and I will find the guy and I'll bring you your diamond and I'll find the guy who ran away. And they're like, cool, great. But then they don't care. They like do not listen. So she's like trying to find the guy and he's like a shitty dragon. He's like not good at it. He's got like weak dragon energy, basically.
Oh shit!
And so,
Weak dragon energy.
and like a wood, so he had like pretended to drown in a river also to run away, but he like chopped his arm off, and so he has a wooden hand, and the wooden hand is shaped so that he can play the viola, which I don't know why they needed to be that specific, but he does have a wooden hand and he plays viola. The whole point was that they were trying to hide dragons from like the humans, but then they just keep turning into dragons like in the middle of the day. And they do say like, oh, we're not like the drawings. Okay, we're like long and skinny and pretty dragons. We're not like fat dragons flying through the air, cool dragons. And I'm like, all right, sure, whatever. And there was one time that they alluded to like mid-air dragon sex, but that was not depicted in the book. They didn't explain the mid-air dragon sex, and it was at the very end. It was at the very end where I was like, okay. Her buttocks made a warm, tempting pressure against his. Her bobas were a pleasing weight between his arms. Her hair lay trapped across the pillows and under his cheek. Kit bent his head to hers with a new purpose. This is how we'll do it. What? He nipped her shoulder with his teeth. Oh. Tonight, he murmured. In the sky. Rue rolled over, wrapped in a sheath of lovely brown hair, white skin, pink lips, watching him through her lashes. She smiled with a slow, sensual mischief. Why wait till then? And drew him back to her. And that's the end of the book. Why wait till then? But so, and that's all that's alluded to, like the dragon sex. Now I was like, hold on. My main qualms. They allude to her having like super strength. So there's one point, and this is like within the same chapter or like one chapter and then the next, where she's like, so, oh, also when the dragons get sick, they can't control when they turn. So like if they get sick, they're just like, puh, smoke, puh, dragon, puh, smoke, back to human, back to dragon, back to smoke. And so they can't control it, so it's like causes a lot of problems because then when they're dragons, they're like thrashing around and real grouchy. When they're trying to find the diamond, the two of them working together, the diamond was thrown into a really gross, they were at like a zoo, and the diamond was in the crocodile pit, and it was like really gross and yucky. Super gross crocodile pit. And so they had to like get to the bottom of the crocodile pit to get the stone. And one of the crocodiles managed to bite the guy's leg. And now this is the other thing. All animals are like terrified of the dragons because they like can sense that they're like the ultimate predator. So all the animals in the zoo are freaking the fuck out because this ultimate predator's here, and like the crocodiles are kind of like, yeah, we're not cool, bro. Get out of our space. And one of them bites him on the leg, and then it gets like severely infected because it's like this like muddy, disgusting crocodile bite. Anyways, and that's how he gets sick, and then he's like poofing into all these different kind of forms and stuff. And she's trying to save him. So while she's trying to save him, so he's like laying on the bed like, and like kind of sideways, and she's like, here, let me try and help you. And she's like, I'm not strong enough to lift you around. Like, can you move? And then it ends up being like, with a lot of effort moves him. And he's like the same as a normal guy. He doesn't have like extreme weight or anything. He's just kind of like a tall dude. But then later, she managed, so she, as a dragon, she takes him to a warehouse where they had previously crashed through the ceiling as dragons. So she knew she could fit him in there. So she gets him to this warehouse and she's like, okay, you're gonna stay here, right? But then she had to leave as a human because obviously being a dragon all the time isn't really useful in London. So she leaves as a human and comes back, and she's like, oh, there's a padlock on the door to get in because she left in a different way. She left as smoke. So she's like, how am I going to get back in? I have all this basket of food. And so she just crumbles the lock into dust. And I'm like, hold up. You weren't strong enough to like shift him on the bed, but you can crumble a padlock? I don't know about that. I don't know how you just like a chunk of metal, but you can't be like. Arr. The other thing is she, of course, is a virgin. Of course, she's a virgin, and they end up hooking up. So there's a lot of passionate kissing and a lot of like sexual tension build up, lead up, and then eventually, after many times of lots of kissing, he's like, I can't take this. I must. And then he's like, I want to be naked now. Poof. And he just like poofs into smoke and then poofs back to human. So then he's like instantly naked without having to take off his clothes, which I thought was hilarious. And then he's like, okay, we're having sex now. And she was definitely a virgin, but she definitely still finished. And I'm like, no. Okay, look, not to mention they were at somebody's mansion at a masquerade ball. She's in a full ball gown, okay? And they have snuck off to a library and they're like behind like a Japanese style room divider screen. And like somebody comes into the freaking room while they're back there. And she's like trying to be all quiet and stuff. Like, no, okay, I'm not gonna lie. This is not lining up for her to finish, okay? That is a very stressful first time. It's not gonna just happen like that, especially because she was like, ow, this hurts. It kind of hurts so good. And then, but like, you know, and then they have to get out the window. Anyway, that annoyed me. I always hate when they always make the girl finish, even though I'm like, it's her first time. Let her have a realistic experience. But that was about it. Other than that, it was a good story. Believable, good establishment of the relationship of the characters. I wouldn't necessarily read the second book.
There's a second book?
Yeah, there's more books. There's a whole series. And then there's another one that's called The Dream Thief. There's like an excerpt of it in the back. But it was not a bad read.
What would you rate it?
I'd say maybe like a solid 4 out of 5. Solid 4 out of 5.
Wow. Where do you want to be for this? Maybe not on the counter.
I mean, you know, the book club room isn't
Yeah.
a bad one.
Okay, not Delaware.
I mean, Delaware is also an option.
No. Delaware's wrong too. Delaware's wrong too. Get out of Delaware. Of soup.